Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Jumps Show. And the Ante-Post lead up to the Cheltenham Festival continues apace. Alongside me, Jake Price and Dan Overall once again to discuss all things Cheltenham Festival. And make sure you like and subscribe to our channel because we're trying to reach that magic 1,000 mark. Want to get there by the Cheltenham Festival. So please do make sure you subscribe to The Jumps Show. Right, without much further ado, let's get on with the action that we saw at the weekend. And although there's been very little racing in Britain in the last couple of weeks, what we have had is some pretty informative action across the Irish Sea. And we saw some very exciting performances at Navan, not least by the bumper winner, a bumper that wasn't actually at the end of the card for once, which was nice to see. Navan doing a Worcester. They were doing on Saturday. It's for me absolutely bolted in the double green of Simon Munir and Isaac Swade. A sensational performance, it has to be said. It's catapulted him to the top of the betting for the champion bumper at the festival. Jake, very good to see you, looking extremely well and very smart as well. What were your thoughts on that brilliant winner? It's for me, and do you think he deserves his place at the top of the betting?
Yeah, it was a really nice performance, wasn't it? It was probably one of the best visual performances we've seen from an Irish bumper winner so far, and definitely from a Willie Mullins horse, I'd say. So you can see why he's moved in such a murky market full of horses that don't seem that great of crop this year. You can definitely understand the move. Is he too short now? That's probably the question. But there is actually a piece of a form that you can read through. The run for Harry, who finished in fourth, was beaten 15 lengths. And he also ran up against Better Days Ahead and Chapeau de Soleil, where he was only beaten 9.25 lengths. So there is a little bit of form there. I don't know how much to take from it, though, because Willie did say after the race that his bumper horses are in a lot better form now than they were before Christmas. He said they were a bit in and out of form before Christmas. So perhaps Chapeau de Soleil and some of the other ones that we've seen come out may improve on their next performances as well. So I wouldn't be taking the skimpy odds on him, but it was a very impressive performance nonetheless.
It was. And Dan Overall, welcome to the show, my friend. Good to see you. What did you make of it? And do you think against the likes of Queensbrook, who is actually my fancy for the race, just because she looks an absolute machine, do you think he's very much going to hold his own in that race?
Good to see you too, mate. Looking well. No broken limbs I see as well from the ski trip, which is always, I think you performed above expectation in that regard. So that's great to see.
Yeah, broken pride though.
Yeah, and don't worry, only everyone who watched the last video has seen that as well. So don't worry. No one saw it. You're more than welcome, buddy. I think that was the bumper performance we'd been hoping to see for some time in terms of the style of it. I think we're so used to these Willie Mullins horses pretty much performing as that, travelling well, coasting up alongside and extending away almost effortlessly. It's been almost lost on us this season, and we finally got one. I say there is some substance to that form as well. And even his point win, there's some substance to that. The third actually went on to finish second. We've all been caught in his hurdling debut. The fourth has won a bump for Chris Gordon as well. But it's interesting. He went off 13-2 for that point-to-point. And all the comments post-race as well, like he's not a flashy workhorse. So it kind of seemed to come out a bit out of nowhere as well. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Look, I think if you took the big price, I know a few people were keen on him before the race because of the lack of depth in that market. And I think took 16 or so to 1 and fair play to sitting on a good ticket now. But ahead of the Dublin Racing Festival, where you'd think the pecking order will become more established, like Jake, I wouldn't be in a rush to back him at the price now. But it's good to have a horse like him who's performed nicely at the top of that market now to flesh it out a bit.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, isn't it? I mean, so often we see throughout the Irish season, Willie Mullins' horses absolutely bolting it. We haven't really seen that so far this campaign, and he was the first one to really take the breath away, wasn't he, really? So no surprise to see him towards the top of the market. Another horse that we saw for Willie Mullins at Navan was Allegory de Vassy, a mare with a huge amount of potential and a pretty massive engine, I think it's fair to say as well. It interested me after the race because Ruby Walsh was at Navan reporting for Racing TV, and he said that he thought that she jumped pretty well in the main. She obviously made that Horlicks mistake that nearly threw Paul out of the plate, but generally she jumped well. And I have to say, watching the race at the time, I was thinking, goodness me, she needs to work on her jumping. Obviously, Ruby Walsh knows more than I do, but I think she has definite work to do in that department. How do you think she stacks up, Dan, to the rest of the mares?
Well, in terms of her natural ability, you'd be hard-pressed to find one better. And I think her jumping does certain aspects of it that need improvement. I think it's a natural scope that almost would impress you more than anything, and she seems quite natural in the way she takes offense. But as you say, Tom, I was of the similar opinion. She screwed a lot in the air at a few. Obviously, there was an error at the first. That's fairly uncharacteristic. I think Willie said after the race they hadn't scored her in the build up to that race, and it just almost came as a bit of a shock. So maybe I wouldn't be overly picky on that one error alone. But throughout the race, she did tend to go out to her right, and I guess maybe if you're on her side, you're saying, well, she's alone. She's almost just correcting herself. And maybe in and amongst horses, that may well correct itself. But it would be a concern against a horse like Impervious, who has shown very few jumping blemishes, has been pretty efficient over offences thus far. But it's going to be one of those style versus substance debates, I think, all the way up to Cheltenham this. I think Impervious, if you're looking purely from a form perspective and what she's achieved, she's clearly done more. But there's this allure about Allegorie de Vassy. There's the way she travels for a race, the way she looks, the way she just seems to have that class about her. Like, you can see it's going to really be an interesting debate, and I'm not really surprised that they're pretty much joint favourites for the Mayor's Chase.
Yeah, I'm not surprised either. Rich Rishi, Willie Mullins, a mare in a race at Cheltenham. I mean, it's a winning combination so many times in the past. For me, I agree with Dan. I think Impervious is the one on form at the moment. I'd rather be with her, I have to say, at the current prices. Jake, what do you think about Allegorie de Vassy?
It's funny because after her debut, everyone was saying about what a spectacular jumper she was with a fence. And then after making that mistake, it's suddenly she can't really jump very well. I mean, I get the Cheltenham aspect in terms of she's a short price, and when you're a short price at Cheltenham, you've got to have everything in your favour for people to not want to take you on. So I obviously understand that. I do think people were a little bit harsh, as Dan said. Going to that first fence, she hadn't jumped a fence all week, according to Willie Mullins, and she had to run around about half the track before she even got to the first fence of the race. So I would excuse that. Great sit from Paul Townend, by the way. Magic horsemanship from him. So yeah, fair play to that. But yeah, I thought it was a little bit harsh that she suddenly now can't jump. I thought that after that she did jump out to the right a little bit, but she, as Dan said, she had plenty of scope. She makes a lovely shape. If she can brush that up, I think Willie said that she's going to school somewhere at a race course between now and the Mayor's Chase. I think she's still got just as good a chance as she did before the race. So yeah, I think some people have been a bit harsh, but I can see why you would be trying to take her on.
Yeah, I mean, you're trying to find small chinks in armour at this point, aren't you? Really, and I think of those chinks that either Impervious and Allegorie de Vassy have shown, I would say at this point that Allegorie's chinks are slightly more prominent than Impervious's are, but we shall see. Thurles saw Allegorie de Vassy and also saw Fakir Dudery in the Grade 2 Horse and Jockey Hotel Chase, possibly a lucky winner. Hoton Couleur looked to have the race in safekeeping when coming down to the last, met it completely spot on and just buckled on landing after the fence. Big shame, a horse who's always promised a lot. This was his chance to really show what he can do. One of my more enthusiastic housemates was of the opinion that Fakir Dudery would have won the race anyway. I have to say I wasn't quite as convinced as he was. Jake, what did you make of that performance, and whether or not Fakir might go to Cheltenham?
Yeah, I thought it was good. I thought he was staying on, but I don't think he probably would have won. Hoton Couleur was unlucky. It's actually quite interesting that Hoton Couleur hasn't even got an entry for the Ryanair or anything like that. So I think Willie was a bit upset about that, but he said that he's just going to find some races in Ireland, but it's kind of what you could get from it reading between the lines. So yeah, I wouldn't be trying to get him priced up or anything like that. And in terms of Fakir, I think Joseph hasn't ruled it out, but if Allaho turns up, I'd imagine it's unlikely that he will. And it's the Ascot Chase next for him, and then probably if he doesn't go to Cheltenham, obviously he'll go to Aintree and try and win that Grade 1 again. So yeah, a nice horse, been a great performer down the years, but I think the Ryanair probably is unlikely if Allaho does turn up. Yeah,
it's probably the case, isn't it? I have to say I was quite surprised by Willie Mullins' comments before the race, actually, because he was asked about Hoton Couleur and he said essentially he's not going to win this. I mean, he's been well backed, and I don't really know why. Also at Thurles, we saw a very nice performance from Embassy Gardens over 2 miles and 7 furlongs. He absolutely thrashed them and has thrown himself towards the top of the betting for the Albert Bartlett, and a strong stayer by the look of it, with a fair amount of gears as well. And Dan, this is a horse who is fairly unexposed, particularly over that kind of trip. Do you think he's got what it takes to be an Albert Bartlett contender?
I was surprised at how short he got, considering you saw that the two Gordon Elliott horses in that race drastically underperformed. The horses ended up finishing second, albeit very comfortably beaten, was pretty much stuffed in a mare's handicap of 111 the race before, and wouldn't exactly be a world beater. So what the substance of that race is really worth, I'm not sure. To me, I mean, perhaps I've got my rose-tinted glasses on, but I just kind of confirmed that what I thought at the time, and that Goodland Maiden Hurdle was a good race. And obviously Goodland and pushed him aside readily at Leopardstown, and much to my pain, Goodland isn't entered in the Albert Bartlett for some god unknown reason, in what might be one of the most baffling pieces of entering I've ever seen. If you've got a favourite for Nathaniel Lacey who's not entered in Albert Bartlett, I just don't. Someone make it make sense, please. But hey, I still really say Goodland's a very good horse. They'll probably go to the Ballymore if he's good enough at the Nathaniel Lacey. I think he won't be quick enough for that race, so they've probably blown that chance. But on Embassy Gardens, 8-1 wouldn't really interest me for the Albert Bartlett, to be honest. I think he's got a bit to prove, and I'm not so sure on the substance of that race.
Interesting stuff, Dan, going against the hype there that has been surrounding Embassy Gardens over the last few days. Jake, are you with or against Embassy Gardens?
Yeah, I'd be against him as well. As Dan said, the race completely fell apart. It's like Santonito was the second favourite, and he got beaten like a million lengths. So, yeah, I don't think there's any substance whatsoever. I think that he proved that a step up to 3 miles is what he wanted, which is what Willie Mullins said before the race. And I think that a large part of the price collapsing so much is because Willie did say in his Sporting Life article about how he would be a Bartlett horse, and he's one for the Cheltenham Notebook. So I think that's played a large part. And as of today, he's actually favourite in places for the Bartlett at 5-1.
You're kidding.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, we had Goodland not in there. Indiana Dream.
Honestly, that makes me sick.
Yeah.
That makes
Champ
me
Kylie
sick.
and Gaelic Warrior also weren't put in. So there were some horses that came out, but I still can't really understand how Hidden Valley Lake's a bigger price than him in places now. So, yeah, that's a bit of a mad one. And also, just to add that Princess Zoe was added to the race, which makes it could be interesting if she goes over hurdles. But yeah, he wouldn't be for me.
No, I don't think he'd be for me either at this stage. Very much enjoying Dan's reaction to that news.
I'm in bits, absolute bits.
The whole Ante-Post ring is.
He's going to win. Goodland's going to win the Nathaniel Lacey, and he would have been a 7-2 favourite for the Albert Bartlett. Look, what are they doing? If he won that race in the manner of a stayer, which is every chance he will do, like, why don't even you give yourself the option? If the Ballymore was your preference, fine, but why not at least, like, hey, it's not my money to enter him, fine, but surely to God, it was worth just a cautionary entry. Like, how's he not entered? Okay, let's move on, because I'm gonna blow.
That's the trailer sorted anyway.
Now. This is it's baffling to me. It really, really is. But there you go. I'm not a race planner. What do I know?
Well, it does baffle. I mean, how often does a Nathaniel Lacey, a hot favourite, not have an Albert Bartlett entry? I mean, it doesn't happen, does it? Just some news to clear up from the last few days. Billaway was beaten quite comprehensively, and to be honest, to me, pretty unsurprisingly, by Ferns Lock. But probably isn't going to go to the Cheltenham Festival. David Christie says he's unlikely to send him there. He is only 6, and in terms of Hunter Chase age, that is very young, and he's got plenty of time to take part in that Cheltenham race. Possibly Stratford, I think, might be on the agenda for him. David Christie likes to send horses there for that Hunter Chase meeting. If not, I imagine towards the end of the season, Punchdown or Fairyhouse could be an option for him. Other things to note as well, Jerry Colombe set for the 3 mile grade 2 10-up Novice Chase. That's at Navan on 12th of February, which could leave the National Hunt Chase open. I'd be surprised, to be honest, if they go down that route, but it does give them an option. Irish Point like to run the Supreme Novices Hurdle, which is good news, makes it even more competitive. And Noble Yates set to run the Cotswold Chase versus Protectorat at Cheltenham on Trials Day. And that should give us a fairly good bearing on the level of his form, because yes, he's shown that he can do it at Aintree, but that was one performance. I'd like to see him back it up, particularly at Cheltenham. I think it'd be good to see. Right, let's move on to one of the more intriguing contenders of the entire campaign, actually, and that is Sir Gerhard. We were told a few weeks ago by Richard Thompson of Cheveley Park that he might not run at all for the rest of the season, but he's come back. He's declared for a Novice Chase on Thursday, and that's a Gorham Park, a beginner's chase. That's over 2 miles. A horse who has all the potential in the world. Dan, I see you shaking your head. Very much looking forward to your opinion on this.
I think this is just another reason why you can't go blindly trusting what's said in these stable tours and interviews and just taking it as gospel, because things change and are ever evolving in this sport, and the landscape has continuously changed. And look, sometimes they're thinking, oh yeah, well, we might just have one run over hurdles, we'll tick him over, and now he's going on a Novice Chase campaign. Like it's he would have got long odds a couple of months ago about that happening, but here we are. And it does open up a lot of opportunities here for horses to get shuffled about. Look, I think fundamentally he's impressive here. I know it's only over 2 miles, but given Willie's hand in the Arkle as it is, and given obviously he's a Ballymore winner, we know he stays 2.5. You'd be thinking Turners all day would be his option should he win impressively and go there. And then you've got obviously the dilemma of Appreciate it's been strong in the market for the Turners in recent days. Does he go there? Does he stick to the Arkle with him? You've got James de Burley, who I think we'll touch on later as well. Like he's been aiming more towards this than the Brown Advisory. Like there's a few moving parts here, and we really are getting to that infamous stage where there are so many players in the Willie Mullins Novice Chase camp, and good luck if you were trying to predict accurately where they're all going to go, because the plot thickens week in, week out, and it's part of the charm of the build up to the festival. But my God, if you were relying on these novice chasers to make some profit, you would be doing your absolute Sweden currently.
Well, I'm pretty sure that Willie Mullins doesn't even know himself at the moment. He's going to leave it to the kind of last couple of weeks to really make a decision on it. He has got an embarrassment of riches, as he always does for the Novice Chase campaign, and I think he's just sitting back on his laurels thinking, I could do what I want here, and to be honest, I'm probably going to win most of the Novice Chase, whatever I do. So, yeah, very nice position for him to be in, as it always is. Jake, Sir Gerhard, thoughts?
Yeah, I was very excited to see him entered, or hear the news that he was getting entered. For me, like I'm only interested in the Turners, and if he does show that he can jump on Thursday, then that I probably will be backing him for that. As Anne mentioned, that he's got a wealth of options across all the races, but the Arkle is particularly stacked, so I wouldn't really want to see him go that way. Obviously, it's a concern only having had one. He probably would have only had one start of offences before going to Cheltenham. Obviously, that's a concern. Thursday, very much, I think. Forget the trip, really. It's more of a can he jump. That's what I'm going to be looking for. He's up against Largy Debut, who's been running over 2.5, and he also drops back to 2 miles. So that'll be interesting. Obviously, Sir Gerhard on hurdles form should absolutely wipe the floor with him. But if he does the same over fences, then we know he's at a similar level. So I can safely back him for the Turners if that happens. Yeah, I think that sums it up really. Hopefully, goes well. Hopefully, he's at he is actually fit and ready to go, and hopefully we can see the promise that he's shown us over hurdles, over fences.
Here's a question for you two, because I'm interested in your opinions here. He's 8-1 currently for the Turners. Does that tempt either of you, given we know the class he holds, and given the uncertainties about Appreciate, James de Burley, and the others in that market? Only Mighty Potter's the solid one there. 8-1.
Yes,
that seems that's not bad. It's one of those where like it could look ridiculously big in like 2 days' time, but
yeah,
Tom,
I think it's worth.
if
you haven't already got a bet on, then perhaps just put a little bit on, so you've covered yourself if he does go and bolt up, because obviously he will be short after that. Yeah, but it definitely tempts me, that's for sure.
Yeah, I could never back a horse Ante-Post for a chase without having seen him over fences. That's just the way I'm built. But obviously, if he's got that class and he brings it to the table over fences, then I think he would be the one for the Turners, because we're going to come onto this later, but one of my lays of the festival, if he turns up and is towards the top of the betting, would be Appreciate It. And I'll come onto that a little bit later on. But I think given that Mighty Potter is the one in the Turners at the moment, that isn't for Willie Mullins, he holds, to me, the best form claims. James de Burley, I think, has got plenty to prove. He was far too keen. I know it came after a long break when he won on Chasing Debut, but I'd be a little bit worried about him at the moment. So I think Sir Gerhard is definitely, if he produces a really nice performance on Chasing Debut, then he could easily be Willie Mullins' his first contender in the Turners. And we know how good he is. I've got the feeling really that given Appreciate It disappointed last year in the Champion Hurdle, I know there were plenty of excuses behind that run. But when we last saw them over hurdle, Sir Gerhard would have beaten Appreciate It. And I like to think that hopefully can be demonstrated over fences now. So, I'm hoping to see a good performance like you both are from Sir Gerhard. Couldn't back him at the moment because I want to see how he jumps. But if he brings that class to the table, I wouldn't be at all surprised if he's going to be the Turners #1 for Willie Mullins. Section 3 here. We're going to talk about some questions from you guys at home. So thanks very much for sending these in. Some really fascinating ones here. The first one I'm going to talk about is from Tom Gallagher. Thanks very much indeed, Tom, for sending this in. He says, I'm a big fan of Dixon Cove for Paul Nicholls. This is a 4-year-old filly. Boodles or Triumph at the moment? I don't know which one of you guys wants to take this one.
I'll take it. She was actually dropped £5 to 125 after finishing second in the Grade 2 finale juvenile hurdle. So that looks like a lenient mark considering what she did there. But she has entered up on Friday and a intended runner if it goes ahead in a listed fillies race. So that may, if she goes and wins that, blow her mark a little bit. But I would probably say Boodles is most likely for her.
Interesting. I'm just going to come in a little bit on this. I wouldn't be at all surprised if Nicholls decides to go to entry for the 4-year-old juvenile with her the anniversary hurdle. Because he likes to target entry. She's not had a huge amount of experience yet, and she's not the biggest either. So I'm thinking maybe the Boodles wouldn't be the most ideal race, considering it's always a bit hurly-burly. So if she did go to entry, that wouldn't surprise me. But I'm sure she'll be a big contender in whatever race she does go in. Maybe not the Triumph. She's possibly not classy enough for that, in my view. Question from Ben Pope. Does James de Burley run in the Turners or the Brown Advisory? And similarly, James Burgess asks, who is Willie Mullins' Brown Advisory horse? Guy Dumini or James de Burley or another one? Dan, you want to take that one?
Well, I hope it's James de Burley. Look, I think we'll figure out a lot at the Flowgas, really. I think that's going to be the do or die time. If there's one horse that Willie has that has the potential to be a more impressive 3 mile than Guy Dumini, it's James de Burley. So if he settles and they ride him a bit more patiently and wins in the manner of a stayer, he'll go there, and that'll probably assure Guy Dumini goes to the National Hunt Chase. Other than that, the 3 mile plus horses aren't all that convincing. You've got Remy, but he's how many times have we thought, oh yeah, he's going to be a superstar, and then disappointed after a promising effort. So I couldn't really have back in with much confidence really at this stage. Willie's been telling us for 4 years this horse has got it all, and he's done it maybe twice so far. So can leave him alone. I say at this moment in time, if you're going to have a bet on anything, I'd be waiting until the Flowgas to find out more.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Again, the Willie Mullins novice campaign, trying to work out where he's going with which horse. Question here from Finton Finnegan, who says, what's your nap and lay of the festival currently? Jake, come to you for this one.
Well, assuming he goes to the Brown Advisory, then the nap would be Jerry Cologne. I think he's got a great chance there. And the lay at the minute for me would be Lucia in the Mares Novice Hurdle. She's only had one run, obviously, over hurdles so far. She's had a small setback since. She's probably only going to have one more run. I think the Irish mares are better. So, yeah, should be my lay. Okay,
nice. Dan, I don't know if you've got a nap and a lay yourself.
No, not for this. I leave these alone when it's in January. I can't bring myself to do it and look like an idiot in 2 months' time. I do that enough.
Well, I don't mind looking like an idiot. So I'll say my nap's going to be Blood Destiny in the Triumph, because as you know, I'm very, very keen on this horse.
Oh, my
God. And my lay is going to be Appreciate It, because I've not been hugely impressed with him. I think he's a horse who, once he comes up against some seriously fierce opposition, is going to struggle, actually. What I've got in my back of my mind is that hurdling performance from last year. The fact he had all that time off the track. He looked so exciting to start with. And I'm also not convinced if he steps up to 2 miles, 4.5 for the Turners, that it's going to really suit him. So, yeah, he'd be my lay at the moment, particularly with Sir Gerhard and likes coming through. If he goes to the Arkle, I think he'd have a better chance than that. But again, not going to be John Bon, is he? So, right, moving on to Luke Carr, who says, do you see So Scottish as more of a Grand Annual or a plate horse, Dan?
I'd say the plate. 2 mile on the old course for the Grand Annual, I think, would be way too sharp for him to be at his best. Connections have previous in the plate as well, and he's shown 2.5 mile form already this season, and he didn't look short stamina there. So I'd say the plate looks pretty short to be the one he's going to go to there.
Okay, a few people have asked, Trevor Clark and Frank Atkinson being two of those. Any horse on your radar for the Martin Pipe? Either of you want to take this one?
I've got one that's away from the normal JP McManus ones that are at the top of the market. It's Henry de Bromhead's Harry de Omgrace. So he's been given a mark of 130 in Ireland. He's finished second behind Favre de Champdou twice. He's won over 2.5. Those two efforts behind Favre de Champdou over 3 miles. So I think he could easily drop back and trip. And he wasn't entered in the Bartlett today either. So perhaps they are thinking a handicap route with him, or they may just leave him at home. But he's one that's on my radar at the minute. Okay, lovely stuff. And finally, Matt White says, who is each of your top British horse in the Gold Cup, and do you think they can seriously challenge Galopin Des Champs or A Plus Tard if they come in good form? Dan?
Well, I've slagged him off enough, to be honest, but I think Brave Man's Game would be my pick over Protectorate if I was to bet either one. I trust Nichols' ability to freshen him up better than I trust Skelton to get Protectorate there, especially after running the Cotswolds Chase. And ultimately, he's been very impressive this season. You can knock what he did in the King George if you're going to argue that Long Press wasn't right. I still think Long Press ran a mighty race that day. The way they pulled clear of the rest indicates it was a good piece of form. And yeah, I mean, Nichols has got previous in this. Do I think he'll win? Probably not, but I can see him giving a good effort and travelling there pretty well come the end, and maybe just not getting up the hill. But I'd have Brave Man's Game as the best of the British by some distance.
Interesting, some distance. Wow, for a Betfair Chase winner, he's got some distance over Protectorate. Love it. Right, finally, we're going to talk about selections. This is an Ante-Post show, of course, for the Cheltenham Festival. Jake, let's start with you this week. Stayers Hurdle, I believe.
Yes, I'm going to attack the Stayers Hurdle because there's been quite a lot of news about it recently. Obviously, we've had Florian Porter, who's now at 50-50 chance at best to get to the race. We've had Classical Dream, who William Mullins has said that it's they're up against it to make it to Cheltenham. And Blazing Carl didn't get an entry this week in either the Galmoy or the Cleve Hurdle. So again, he's another horse that has been talked as one that's up against it to make it to the festival, but for some reason he's been backed again this week. So yeah, Home by the Lead is definitely solid. He's 4-1 fav. I just don't fully trust yet that he has just turned into this Grade 1 superstar overnight. It was a great performance over Christmas. I just don't trust that he can definitely back that up. And the horse that I think has got the most potential in the whole field, because after that you're looking at Paisley Park, who's 11, and all these old timers in England that run against each other every other week. So the horse that I think has got the most potential to actually improve past all of these and become a staying star in the division really is Tuiupu for Gordon Elliott. So obviously his breakout performance came in November, where he beat both Classical Dream and Honeysuckle in the Hatton's Grace. I thought that was a really good performance. It was his first time trying 2.5, stayed on really strongly towards the finish, and obviously had to battle Classical Dream all the way to the line, and prevailed in that battle. So I think Salmon is going to be fine for him. But the main reason I'm backing him now is because on Thursday he runs in the Galmoy Hurdle, so it's a Grade 2 at Gowran over 3 miles, and the best rival he's up against is Beacon Edge. So if he can't go and beat Beacon Edge impressively and prove his stamina over 3 miles, then obviously he's going to have no chance. But right now, I want to back him, get him on the team, because I think he's going to shorten quite a bit after he proves that stamina, which I think he'll be fine with, and his trainer agrees, and that's why he's going for the 3 mile division. So yeah, Tuiupu, a lot of people will crab him for needing soft ground, but I just don't buy it. I think he's shown that he has preference for soft ground. I think he can handle soft ground better than others, but there's no way that he doesn't handle yielding conditions, because he bolted up in the Fishery Lane last year. I think a lot of similar arguments are going around about Joe Colombe at the minute as well, and I just don't buy that either. I don't see why he needs soft ground. He's ran on yielding once, and he absolutely bolted up in a 2 mile 7 furlong novice hurdle as well. So yeah, I think you can read too much into what horses can and can't do before the day. Obviously, if the festival turns up soft, then it's really going to help both of the horses, because they can, as I said, they can handle these conditions really well, and perhaps better than some other horses. But I think that he's going to prove his stamina on Thursday. I think he's the horse that's got the most upside in the whole division, and albeit he hasn't proven his stamina yet, hopefully he'll do that, and hopefully we'll have a good bet for the stayers.
Yeah, sound case. He's a horse I've always liked, actually, Tuiupu, and hopefully he can prove it on the big stage at some point, hopefully in the Stayers Hurdle for you, Jake. Dan, what about you this week?
Yeah, so after I ripped up my Ballygriffin Cottage bet for the National Hunt Chase last week, I thought, well, I'm not averse to going again. So I'm going in the National Hunt Chase. And look, I think when you look at these Ante-Post markets, I think half the reason I back these horses is because of the shape of the race currently. And this is one I just think is crying out for something to just challenge the status quo. Well, Gaillard Dominil has been the Ante-Post favourite in this race for a long time. And we know he's the classiest horse in this race if he lines up. Look, the reality is there is still a possibility he runs the Brown Advisory, much to Patrick Mullins' disgruntledness, depending what likes of James de Burley do and how other cards fall. The fact is, the one race he did win, albeit a Grade 1, he completely fell apart that race. Churchdown Warrior was in second. I mean, he's been beaten by the likes of the Goffer, who's then since been well beaten by the likes of Hador. So the form of that win isn't much. He did achieve a decent amount behind Mighty Potter, but I'm just not convinced he's like an absolute top-class animal. And to be backing him at near even money, I wouldn't be touching him. Chemical Energy, they're trying to do a Galvin with him, but Galvin at least finished second in that novice handicap the season before and had 7 chase starts. Chemical Energy will be going there with 2, and the race he won at Cheltenham completely fell apart. And I just wouldn't be convinced of him at 9-2 either. And then you've got Jerry Colom, I don't think will run here under any circumstances. I just think he's going to run in the Browns or nothing. Remy Hayes isn't even qualified yet. They have entered him. But if he runs, he's just second string for Gerhard du Mesnil. So I'd be willing to take him on as well. And after that, you've got basically a bunch of British handicappers. To be quite honest, you've got Mr. Coffee, T for Free, the likes of that. Which brings us to Marlon Mission, who admittedly was behind Chemical Energy and well behind him in October, but plenty of reasons why that happened. First start of the season, he had his palate cauterized after, and he apparently choked as well, which is why he finished so tamely. So I think you can put a line completely through that effort, give him plenty of time to recover afterwards, which I like. And he was given a confidence-building run at Punchestown on New Year's Eve. Normally he's ridden quite aggressively, but they held him out in the back, got his jumping together, stayed on really powerfully then, and really caught the eye in what looked a pretty decent race of its standard. Chantruse in second, Fakira fourth, who I know a lot of people have an eye on for handicaps as well. And with that run under his belt, he really opposed Chantruse the other day, ridden much more positively again this time. They were actually going for it, you could tell. And his jumping under pressure, I thought, was pretty superb that day. It was a pretty efficient round of jumping. Only Chantruse tried to go with him, and he paid the price quite dearly for that. He ended up finishing well beaten in 5th. Tenzing couldn't match him at all for jumping. He dropped back through the field and stayed on again, but it was just Marlon Mission's relentless jumping from the front, which really put him, and he never had a chance after halfway. I just like the way he's improving race on race. Like they've done the right thing by giving him time after that Cheltenham run, and he's kind of coming back to what we know he could have been. Like, you look back at his hurdles form, we know he's a smart horse from that. Like, he beat the real whacker in the River Don. Obviously, he's now favourite for the Brown Advisory. Admittedly, he has improved for fences, but it's still decent form. He also beat Complete Unknown at Perth towards the end of the season. I guess if there is a criticism you can lay at him, it would be that maybe his 2 most disappointing runs have come at Cheltenham. But as I say, there was reasons for that run in October. He was 7th in the Albert Bartlett. And look, we've seen good horses been beaten in the Albert Bartlett before. I wouldn't necessarily hold that over his head too much. I'm just willing to take a chance that at 14-1, this race could cut up quite a bit. We could get a similar renewal to last year where there's only 6 or 7. And to be honest, after the run the other day, I was surprised he wasn't single figures already. Like, the fact that he's still 14-1, to me, I thought was a very good price for a horse whose only entry is this. So I can't be done out again in terms of not being entered in a race. He is entered for this and this only, so he should be coming here. He's by miler out of a half sister to a 3 mile 5 furlong winner. So stamina looks all about it, and his pedigree would back it up. I generally think if he comes here and the race, even if one of 2 of those top 2 in the market don't come here, which seems likely, he'll be a single figure price. And given his riding style from the front, I think he's an amateur's dream, and he'll give a bold sight from the front.
Yeah, very sound argument again there, Dan. I haven't got a huge amount of time left, so I'm not going to delve too much into my selection, which actually also comes to the National Hunt Chase, and it's for Hidden Heroics. I have to say, I said this to my housemates the other day, and they just started laughing at me. But what I would say about Hidden Heroics is that, as you mentioned, Dan, this is a very weak race. I think it's going to turn into an even weaker one, to be honest, because I actually think I've got a theory that Willie's going to send Gerhard du Mesnil to the Brown Advisory, and he'll send Ramillies as his number 1 once he's qualified to this race. And I think that's just going to make the race even weaker. So I agree with your comments on Chemical Energy. I think it was a Mickey Mouse race that he won. And then going down of the English runners, I think Hidden Heroics is perhaps the most exciting of them. He's got a huge amount to prove, I know that, but he's had 2 runs of offences so far, absolutely bolted up both times. Dan Skelton said after he won at Cheltenham last time that the Scottish National is likely to be the place he ends up eventually. So 3 mile 6 furlongs is hopefully going to be no problem for him at Cheltenham at all. I see him as being a pace angle in the race because that's how he's bossed his field so far. He's a little bit fresh, a little bit free in the run, but I don't see that being too much of an issue, particularly as there's likely to be a small field once again, as there was last year. So I'm hoping that he can go out and kind of boss it a little bit. He jumps very well for a novice, which is going to stand him in good stead in a race like this. So if I think 25-1 is a decent each way shout, I think if he turns up on the race, which he's more than likely to, he is almost certainly going to run in the contest, which, as you say, is a plus at this point. He'd be a very interesting pick, I think, around about 25-1. I see him being 12, 14s, perhaps even shorter on the day. So in a weak race, possibly the weakest novice chase of the festival, actually novice race in general, I think at the festival, Hidden Heroics definitely serves a fair bit of value for me. But that's my thoughts on that. And that is it for this week's edition of the Jumps Show. Please do like and subscribe to this video, and indeed comment with your best pick for Trials Day. It's a really exciting meeting coming up with plenty of top class racing and some rearranged contests to look forward to as well. Jake, Dan, thanks very much indeed for your time.
Cheers.
Pleasure, guys.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. A true pleasure once again. Hope you all enjoyed it at home, and we'll see you next time on The Jump Show.